Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Betty Rhoades. I'm the Executive Director of HillVets, and we are here today with yet another awesome interview as part of our HillVets 100 in 100 virtual series. And I got to tell you, this event is very special for me. Not to make any of our other interviewees feel bad because they're all amazing, but I have a very personal connection to our HillVets 100 honoree that we have here today, Chris Davis. Just to tell you a little bit about Chris and to lead into how we know each other, Chris earned his commission at the U.S. Naval Academy in 2009 and did all manner of incredible things in his earlier time in the military, and then was selected for what's called the Funded Law Education Program. So that allowed him to attend law school while serving on active duty. And he happened to attend law school at the illustrious University of Tennessee College of Law in Knoxville. And anyone who knows me knows that is where I also got my law degree. So Chris and I have that in common, and we'll get into all of that. But Chris now is a major in the Marine Corps. He's serving as government trial counsel, responsible for lead prosecuting all felony level cases for Marines that fall under his purview. And in addition, he has a master's degree in management and leadership. He's been nationally published any number of times, and he is just a tremendous human being and somebody that I'm really proud to call a friend and colleague. So Chris, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Betty. It's so good to see you.
Yes, I wish we were seeing each other in person at a fancy gala. I mean, obviously that was what we were hoping for, but we'll take this for now. We'll kind of get into the law school and Tennessee bit, but I want our audience to know a little bit more about you and kind of how you got your start. So why don't we kick it off by having you kind of introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, your family, and kind of what drew you to the military and where you got your start there at the Naval Academy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Navy brat. My old man was in the Navy. He retired from the Navy, and he specifically was a Navy chaplain, a minister. So my upbringing, we moved around a lot. Home was a term that kind of was movable, convenient. It was wherever whatever I needed to do to fit in where I was, that was where home was. I grew up, a large portion of my upbringing was in the Chesapeake, Virginia Beach area of southeastern Virginia. And, and throughout that upbringing, one of the few consistencies that me and my brother had was we were always around military folks. And specifically, my dad did a significant amount of time as a Navy chaplain assigned to Marine Corps units. Some of my most impressionable years as a young boy was seeing Marines march in formation, snap, pop, wearing dress blues, toys for tots. And those are the memories I have. So, and the natural progression from that was I played with a lot of Army men. I had little cap guns when I was a kid. We would run around and I would terrorize my younger brother. And I think I always associated the Marine Corps. Well, service was always important to my family. And so I think service to the nation in some form or fashion was always the eventual glide slope of the trajectory for me. And I think the Marine Corps became something for me because it seemed challenging. It was always, it was my understanding that it was the toughest branch of service, the hardest ascensions process, the highest attrition rate. And that was just something for me in the back of my mind that I had always thought would be a worthwhile endeavor.
So when you were at the Naval Academy, you majored in political science and you had a concentration in international politics and law. So you seemed like you kind of had your eye well into the future in terms of what you wanted to do. How did you come to have, that's some vision that not all young people have. How did that really solidify in you?
So that's very kind of you. It couldn't be further from the truth. The Naval Academy is an engineering school. They pride themselves on their we all graduate with a bachelor's of science. We take a lot of technical courses, and quite frankly, My priorities were not aligned academically. The person I am now at 33 is not who I was at 18 and 19. I can tell you.
Imagine that.
I can tell you all of my classmates at the academy, and especially my roommates, would attest to that. My priorities at the Naval Academy were working out, a little bit more working out, and in my spare time, I tried to work out. Academics really got in the way of me doing anything I really want to do. And for midshipmen at the Naval Academy, we call them the Group 3 majors. They're your social sciences, political science, economics. Those are where people who are otherwise afraid of taking more engineering or math type courses, we go to hide. So the adage, obviously the Naval Academy has always been known for producing naval aviators. The adage poli-sci flies is the saying at the Naval Academy if you are looking for a little bit easier academic route. And I'm not sure that I was looking for an academic challenge at that mark. I wasn't looking for the easy way out. Political science interests me really because I didn't want to get a history degree, and I thought history degree would pigeonhole me into either being a Marine Corps officer forever or a history teacher and nothing in between. So political science was just kind of the leftovers. I will, to your point, some of the law-related classes that I took towards the end of my time at the Naval Academy were quite interesting to me, and I did, quite frankly, very well in them. Looking back, we went about a half mile wide and not very deep. We didn't study cases. We didn't read them in any kind of depth. We just kind of, for you and me as lawyers, we read the facts and we learned the rule, and that was, and we kind of tracked the progression of certain major cases, but nothing in any sort of nuance. But for me, the political science thing was just it was what was left when I determined what I didn't want to do. And I didn't do academically overly well. I don't think I possess a lot of the maturity that I have now. I never wanted to go to school ever again after I graduated the academy. The academy beat me down and made me fearful. I didn't read, I didn't write, I didn't enjoy any of those things when I was first commissioned as a second lieutenant. It is a strange bit of irony that now, 12 years out of the Naval Academy, I have spent almost every other year in some form of upper level education, whether that's earning my master's degree, going to graduate level courses of study through the Marine Corps, or completing my law degree. So and I read now. So, and I enjoy reading. So, which is also a huge difference from, how I was as a midshipman. So there was no grand plan. The plan was to be a Marine and be the best Marine officer I could be for as long as I thought it was going to be fun.
Well, I appreciate the candor, even though you gave away the secrets, and I was trying to really make you seem like you really had it all together back then. But who has it together at 18? Like, please.
Right. I agree.
And I think a lot of folks, when they join the military at that point in their lives, they're looking for some of that direction, some of that discipline, that helps them become a more mature person. Do you feel like, I guess you probably have learned any number of leadership lessons during your time in the service, but, kind of in those earlier years, as you're, figuring out what kind of Marine you're going to be, any leadership lessons or experiences that really stand out to you that kind of helped point the way to the next place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I attribute a lot of my, to the extent that I've had success, I attribute a lot of it to the Naval Academy and a lot of those early tough mentors that I had. So the Naval Academy, if you strip it down to its bare bones, it's a leadership laboratory. And what I mean by that is you first, as a plebe, you lose. As a plebe, you go from being, typically your Naval Academy plebe is someone who is probably markedly successful in high school, might have been fairly popular, might have been the captain of a sports team, might have got the pretty girl at prom or pretty guy at your prom. And then you lose all of that. You lose your identity, you lose anything that makes you wrong, you lose all your rights, you lose all your privileges. And when you strip yourself down, you learn to be a follower. And the Naval Academy is for an entire year, you do nothing but take orders and get bossed around. And I think that's incredibly important. To be a good leader first, you have to be a good follower. And then for the next couple of years, both as a sophomore, junior, and a senior, you gain more and more more responsibility. And along with those duties and responsibilities, as they increase, you gain back some of your privileges. I think that, so being a good follower is important to being a good leader. And I had the opportunity to try out things and see what didn't work for me. There's nothing tougher in leadership than peer leadership. There's no incentive for your peers necessarily to listen to what you have to say or follow your orders, other than maybe they believe in your vision or they just like you and they just don't, the whole Marshall Lynch, I just don't want to get fined kind of thing. You don't want to get in trouble and cause, any more attention to be brought to yourself in an environment like the Naval Academy. So I got to try out a lot of things, and I got to see a lot of things that didn't work. I think one of the hardest lessons that I was able to learn at the Naval Academy is, in the Marine Corps and the Navy, we call it owning the order. And what that means is there's a lot of times that you're going to get a boss, or you're going to have an organization, or you're going to be a part of something, and the order is going to come down from higher. And that order is not going to be something that you necessarily agree with. You might not be amenable to it. It might not be popular. It might not be fun. You might not be liked for promulgating that order. But being a part of something that's bigger than yourself, you have to own the order. And owning the order means when it's time for you to stand in front of the troops, to stand in front of your fellow midshipmen, to stand in front of your Marines, that order became your order. And you can't stand up in front of, now as a Marine, I can't stand up in front of my Marines and tell them, well, hey guys, do this for me. It's not what I want either, but we gotta do this because the boss wants it. Well, no one's gonna follow you there. No one's gonna learn. And I got to see that. You don't want to be an unpopular midshipman. You don't want to make your life any more difficult than you have to at the Naval Academy. And you start bargaining with people, and you find out quickly that doesn't, in the end, it might make the moments after you pass the word easier, but in the end, you just undermine your own ability, your credibility, and your leadership abilities. So I think that one of the lessons that I learned quite early was owning the order when it comes down. By virtue of being a leader, I have the responsibility to own that order. And the second thing, I think it's incredibly important to all Marines is leadership by example. The more rank that I earn does not necessarily make my life easier, nor should it. Right. I'm still expected to do the bare basics of every Marine. I am still a basically qualified Marine, and all those requirements associated with me just being a Marine, with Marine Corps tattooed across my heart. I have to do those every single day. I don't get out of things just because I have rank. So, and that's important because, especially as an officer, Marines are always watching. They are watching more than you realize. And failing to enforce a standard, failing to uphold the standard, you create a new standard as a leader. And I think that's incredibly important, to hold yourself to account for the rules, regulations, and what is expected of you in whatever position you hold. So own the order, be a follower, to be a good leader, and leadership by example. I think they're the three maybe resounding leadership lessons I learned at my time on the Severn River.
all good lessons for sure. So, you left the Naval Academy, you started your career of service, and at some point in the middle of all the other things you were doing, all the different responsibilities you had, you decided that you wanted to go to law school. And, you didn't meet me early enough for me to talk you out of it, which is one of my favorite pastimes, talking people out of going to law school. But I think in your case, I don't guess that I would have talked you out of it, nor do I think it would have been a good idea seeing what you've done. But what was it that made you, after having all these other experiences, that made you say, you know what, this is the direction that I want to take my service?
Right. So again, it was never the plan. I never wanted to go to school ever again after I left Annapolis. It was actually on a deployment at the end of 2011, 2012, when I was serving in Afghanistan. And the unit that I was assigned to was a special task force that was set up to establish the rule of law in Afghanistan. Essentially, in the absence of a governing document like a constitution, the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, we were assisting the country create what would be its governing documentation, a constitution of sorts. I had no part in those discussions. I was not pounding my table on any kind of desk, advocating for positions or things to be put into that document, obviously. I was just somebody assigned to the unit in close proximity to those individuals. And those individuals were lawyers. They were a lot of the times lawyers, civilian lawyers from the United States, serving in their capacity, but in the State Department, as well as judge advocates, military lawyers. Mm-hmm. And I was, the word impressed doesn't even begin to quantify, how I felt watching some of these discussions.
I mean, what consequential, important work to witness. I mean, it's an opportunity that few would ever get.
Yeah, I remember going to these shuras and these local town meetings with local Afghan leaders and government officials, and just listening to the conversations that were occurring through interpreters. And I was absolutely floored by the impact that a skilled lawyer could make, both in the community, in their provinces, and in the country at large. And so in the back of my mind, I kind of thought, I enjoy being a Marine. I love wearing the uniform. I love serving, left and right with my brothers and sisters. But maybe after the Marine Corps, I'll go to law school. Maybe that would be something, when I'm in my 40s or 50s, that'll be the next challenge in my life. Because like I said, I enjoy being a Marine. I enjoy waking up and putting my uniform on each day. And so I wasn't ready to hang that up in the closet. So I was in the gym, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I knew that he was either I had believed he was up for orders. He was going to be moving. He was going to be leaving his present duty assignment. And so I asked him, "Hey, Greg, I think you're up for orders this summer. Where is the Marine Corps? Where are you heading?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to SMU Law School in Texas." And I kind of recoiled, and I said, "Well, that's super disappointing. I really had hoped that good officers like you would stay in the Marine Corps." And he's like, "Well, I am staying in the Marine Corps." He's like, "There's a program in the Marine Corps where one or two guys, guys and gals a year get selected to go to law school while they're still on active duty." And I remember my immediate reaction to that was my jaw hit the floor. And I was like, an opportunity like that exists? Just tell me more. I had 100 questions, and I think that my pre-workout powder probably weared off during the course of that hour-long conversation. And I asked him everything I could possibly think of. And, and that started what was effectively about an 18-month to 20-month process. The package is incredibly vigorous, it's strenuous, intentionally so. It's a self-eliminating kind of process. You not only have to apply through the Marine Corps and get the Marine Corps to select you to go to law school, you have to, on your own, study for the LSATs, get into law schools. The admission is all on your own dime. And so I started that process. Well,
and that's on top of all your other day-to-day duties for your job,
Yeah. So at that time, I was commanding a company of 165 Marines. I had 4 officers working for me. I had a first sergeant. I had all the immense complexities that come along with commanding a company, all the good and all the bad. My phone, I never went through a weekend without my phone ringing. Someone getting arrested, someone having an issue, or just someone needing to talk. In some ways, I miss that life. In some ways, I'm very thankful that I get very few phone calls at 2 o'clock in the morning these days. So the interesting thing was I submitted my package. I applied to all these schools. I got into a handful of schools that I was interested in. And then the Marine Corps threw me a curveball, and they sent me to training. And the training was in an Army base in Missouri called Fort Leonard Wood. It's in the middle of nowhere, affectionately known by the Army as Fort Lost in the Woods, Missouri. Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri is an interesting place. And I had to go to school for some advanced graduate level training for a period of time of about 6 months. I couldn't petition the Marine Corps to let me do what I wanted to do. That those were orders. So I went out to Fort Leonard Wood, and I reapplied. I reapplied for the law education program, and on the second time, I was selected as the primary. So what I did was I had reached out to all these schools when the Marine Corps gave me orders to Fort Leonard Wood, and I told all the schools individually in a pretty straightforward letter, hey, I applied to your school in good faith. I thought that I would be selected. I had hoped to be selected to enter the incoming class at that time, 2018. So this would have been the fall of 2014, or I'm sorry, the spring of 2014 timeframe. But the Marine Corps has had other plans for me, and with no exception, with only one exception, all those schools got back to me. Hey, we totally understand. We totally get it. If you just reapply, we'll hold on to your application, and we'll hopefully talk to you next year. That would be great. Tennessee, the University of Tennessee was different. And I still to this day, I keep the letter from Dean Wilson. Then Dean Wilson, the letter said, you're admitted to the class of 2018, but you're also admitted to whatever class you apply to. We will hold on to your application. Just let us know what your plans are for next year. And as a Marine, our motto is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Loyalty is very, very important to me. I come by it naturally, I guess, being a Marine. That meant something to me. I will not pretend like Tennessee was initially my first choice. With the things that I wanted to study in law school, Tennessee didn't offer any kind of unique international law programs. They didn't offer any military justice type of courses. Tennessee was just a school that I had a good feeling about. I really enjoyed my preview day when I went there. I really enjoyed the staff and the individual professors. It really felt like me to a family sort of environment, which was very important to me. But I wasn't sure at that time that it was enough to outweigh my desires to go to some other schools. But that letter meant something to me, and for the whole year, I held on to that letter. When I got accepted for the law education program that following fall, so this is like the November 2015 timeframe. I just sent a quick email to the admissions folks at Tennessee, and I said, hey, I got my orders. I can still come next August if you'll have me. And that was it.
Well, I mean, I think your feelings about the College of Law at UT are very similar to the ones that I had, although I think it was my first choice. But, I think what's really interesting about UT and similarly situated schools is that, it's that value proposition, right? Because law school is expensive. And one of the reasons, I joke about talking people out of it, but, it's a very costly endeavor to go to law school. And this myth of, law school being this like magic ticket to six figures forever, it's just not true. If it ever was true, it's certainly not true anymore. And I felt like, Tennessee offered just, a great education at a great value. And you're right about the family piece. It's a smaller law school than a lot of other places. So you get that sort of personal attention. So that answers kind of what drew you to UT. But as someone who, number one, said he didn't want to go to any more school, and also, had been away from academics for a while, how did you find the experience of coming back into your higher education?
Yeah, it was incredibly challenging. So I don't have any lawyers in my family. I didn't know what to expect from law school. In fact, though I ended up doing pretty well overall by the time I graduated law school, I might have had the worst grade in the class for my Torts 1 class, which ironically was one of my favorite classes that first semester. For those that don't know what torts is, it's like your common accident law. It's like when somebody bangs their knee, who's responsible? When something blows up, whose fault is it? I loved it. In a very, very sick sense of humor, the funny things that happen to people, the tragic things that happen to people are quite funny 100 years later. But I did terrible in that class. And I did terrible in that class because I didn't understand what law school was about. I thought that law school was going to be about memorizing a bunch of laws, regurgitating that for an exam. And I mean, the Marine Corps made me uniquely qualified to remember rules. I thought that rules were what law school was about. What I didn't realize was law school was about analyzing those rules. So here's the rule. Got it. How do you defend a client, or how do you prosecute a client for the exact same rule? That's kind of the stripping it down, what we call analysis in law school. And I didn't do any of that first semester. I just regurgitated rules. And as a good Marine officer, I gave the answer. Here is the answer. Here's, you gave me the rule, you gave me the situation. Well, here, professor, I'll tell you how this thing ends up. And so obviously my grades suffered significantly. I also, you talk about where I was as a 21-year-old graduating from the Naval Academy. I was borderline, I was incredibly humbled by not only how smart some of my classmates were that came straight out of undergrad. I affectionately called them the 17th graders. But not only were they smart, but the amount of maturity that they had to kind of know where they wanted to go in their life and commit themselves to just an incredibly challenging next few years course of study, that dwarfs anything you've ever done in undergrad. Adjusting to my interactions with them, coming from interacting with Marines, was also it was also very challenging. So not only was it academically a total surprise, because I had not mentally prepared myself for what law school was going to mean or what it was going to entail, it was also, quite frankly, a social surprise too, because I did not know what to expect with my interactions with them, and I had to adjust a lot of my harshness accordingly. And I don't know that I navigated that all that well, but you'll have to ask my classmates about that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, now that we have such robust education benefits for service members, veterans, and their families, so many folks are getting back into education, that maybe couldn't have or wouldn't have previously. So what's your advice to them? What piece of advice that do you wish that you had before you came back into that educational environment after being, active duty? I mean, you were still active duty when you were a student, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, you don't realize how many, you said it, law school is an incredibly expensive, and you need to be committed to want to begin the endeavor of law school. But what you don't realize, and I didn't realize this as a then captain in the Marine Corps, the immense resources available, especially for veterans that want to pursue higher education or go to school. Everyone knows about the GI Bill, but you don't realize that, oftentimes if you just contact admissions counselors, if you contact members of these veteran resource centers at every major campus in the nation, they will help you out along the way. They want to help you out. That's what their sole lot in life is, to help veterans get connected to resources, get adjusted to the, acclimatize themselves to their new surroundings. So my advice would be, start with your maybe your 10-year, your 5-year plan, and backwards plan from where you see that you want to be to how you get there. And if how you get there involves going to college, if it involves getting your master's degree, if it means going to medical school, if it means going to law school, reach out to people, just do a quick Google search, hop on that school's webpage and contact the admissions folks, contact some counselors there. And if they have a veterans resource page, most schools these days will have a quick tab that you can find. Contact those folks too. Introduce yourself, tell them who you are, what your goals are, and they're going to share information with you. And I think that before going to law school, even I was intimidated to do that. I didn't think that a law school would want to deal with me. Who am I? And I think that perception is so wrong. There are so many resources out there. If it's something that you want, if it's a dream you have, just get after it. Get in the arena and do it.
Yeah, it's out there for you. Yeah, you just gotta go out and pursue it. So before we kind of get into the next piece of our conversation, which is a lot of why you were nominated for and selected for the HillVets 100, we've got some people, you know, that I think you might know asking questions, because some of them are a little silly, but this is the one that I feel like you have to answer, because we talked about this yesterday. We got Philip asking you about the photo behind you. So care to share about that?
Okay, so I'll say two things about it. So the photo is it's a pretty iconic photo during the Great Depression, the building of the Empire State Building. It's a bunch of workers on their lunch break, and how they are just casually sitting, 90 stories up on this building, having their lunch break. In fact, this guy, I believe, is drinking bourbon. And so
sure.
Cheers to that.
Sure, cheers.
I absolutely, I love the photo, the ingenuity, the American spirit, building these skyscrapers in New York. I just have always loved this photo. I think the first time I ever saw it was in a bathroom somewhere. And I loved it, and I wanted my own. So I bought the photo when I was a brand new second lieutenant, and I wasn't making the money that I'm making now as a major. If as a government employee, I'm even making that much money. So this is actually a poster, and the poster probably didn't cost. It did not run me more than $40 or maybe $50. The frame itself was probably 5 times more expensive because I had to get it professionally framed. So this is a really nice poster that 23-year-old, 22-year-old Second Lieutenant Chris Davis wanted. And I have lugged this thing around the world with me, and it always hangs somewhere prominently.
Take inspiration wherever you can find it. I like it.
This guy, the bourbon guy.
I mean, I think I would need some bourbon if I was sitting up that high in that kind of a situation, to just calm the nerves. We've also got we've got Susan asking if you have any Netflix recommendations. Although truthfully, Chris, I don't know how you would ever have time for Netflix with the reading and the physical activity and your work. But do you have Netflix recommendations?
I have never, ever had a Netflix account.
Oh, wow.
So while I'm aware socially of certain Netflix shows that are out there, and I've heard them in passing, I myself have never, ever had my own Netflix account. Like you said, I spend most of my day either working. I try to get in some kind of physical activity, either inside or outside, and I absolutely love reading. So that is how I consume my time. If it's not football season, and specifically college football season,
yep.
I don't even know why I pay for cable anymore. To be perfectly honest, my TV sits off and collects dust for most of the year.
I don't think that's necessarily a negative, and we'll get back to the books later. But I want to chat about your work with Vols for Vets. So to give some color and background. So I'm the chair currently of our UT College of Law Alumni Council, and I'm very active with alumni activities, although it's a lot less fun during COVID. And I'm sort of a weird outlier in the alumni community because, as you can imagine, most law school students go on to become actual lawyers, and they work for firms, or they work in-house at businesses, or they are general counsel for some, whoever. And I really took a different path. And folks who know my background, I worked for the VA for a long time, then in nonprofits, but all in the veteran serving space. And I can't remember if it was Joan Hemingway, and shout out to Joan because she's one of both of our favorite people. She's a wonderful professor at the College of Law. I think it was her who said, you need to connect with this current student. I had long since left UT, but you need to connect with this current student. He is a Marine, and he is super driven, and he's got all these ideas, and he wants to form this organization. And I think you can help him. And
Professor Hemingway was my faculty advisor. So the first time I ever met Professor Hemingway, she's sitting at my table. It's like day 2 of law school. We're all at dinner for the first time. And she looks over at me, and I pushed my dessert to the side. And she was like,
"What?
Can I have that?" And I was like, I'm going to love this lady.
She's so great. But yeah, she connected us. And, you expressed to me that you wanted to start this organization at the College of Law for and about veterans. So talk to me a little bit about kind of how that came about. What was the gap that you were seeing that needed to be addressed that you felt like you were, in a position to really tackle?
Yeah, so I had never lived in East Tennessee before, but I tell you, anybody who's ever transplanted to East Tennessee quickly falls in love with the folks that live in Tennessee. Knoxville will always have my heart. I had to, when I was choosing what I would wear tonight, I had to wear my tricolor. So there is an immense amount of feelings of community and service that comes along with the East Tennessee type of culture. And having no major military installations there, they are quite endeared. They appreciate veterans on a level that you're not used to seeing in a non-military town. So specifically, there is a legal assistance clinic there, Legal Assistance East Tennessee, LEAT. And they, at the time, or prior to me getting there, they hosted a veterans clinic. And basically, for those that have not done, are not too familiar with the law or lawyering, a clinic, they did like a walk-in clinic. And what that meant is if you have a problem that can be resolved in a short period of time, you bring it to this clinic, and for no charge, lawyers are going to work with you over the period of an hour or so to help you resolve your claim, and either exchange numbers, provide guidance, something. And these issues are typically workers' compensation claims, maybe landlord-tenant issues if you're having an issue with your landlord. And sometimes more complex cases like VA claims. So when I heard that these veterans clinics were going on once or twice a month, I signed up for all of them my first semester. And the interesting thing about the LEAT clinics were there was always a line of veterans out the door. And there was not enough time in the day to help them all. I mean, these lawyers had to get back to their jobs. They were giving them their time during their lunch hour to provide a legal assistance to these veterans. So 2 hours a week, every other week wasn't enough. There was a need there. And so I started asking some of the lawyers in the Knoxville community, in the Knoxville Bar Association, started asking professors. I started asking our mutual friend who was at running the Career Center at that time, Brad Morgan. I asked Director Morgan, what more can we do? And what he said was typically the local bar association, the local lawyers will follow the enthusiasms of the students. You guys dictate a lot of what the local community will do and engage with. If there is student support, people will get behind you, and they'll get behind you with their support, with their time, with their money. Start a student organization. And the student organization, how it started was Director Morgan leading the Career Centers every spring break. The Career Center sponsored what was called an alternative spring break. The alternative spring break was, instead of during law school going to Cancun or going on some exotic trip, you could go, and in our circumstances, you could go to Fort Campbell, which is a base, an Army installation, where the home of the 101st Airborne, there in Clarksville, Tennessee, on the Kentucky-Tennessee border. And you could go there and you could live Army judge advocate lawyer life for a week, and you could determine if it was something that you'd want to pursue. So the Career Center was, they had a vested interest in trying to expose people to military life to see if that was something that they would want to do. The group that we assembled for that first, my 1L year, my first year of law school, the group that we assembled for that alternative spring break, absolutely, we latched onto each other, and we created an incredibly tight bond. And over our, we often joke that Vols for Vets was founded with 2 twin beds smashed together in this, we were on a budget, roadway Inn Suites in lovely Clarksville, Tennessee. We talked about what else we could do, both inside the schools, in the halls of the school, and in the local community. And we hatched an idea for what became Vols for Veterans. Vols for Veterans had a 3-part mission when we founded it. And that was, one, help provide legal assistance to those veterans in the local community that had a need. And, and the way we would do that is we had students now. We assembled a cohort of people that were interested in supporting our mission to help attorneys provide legal assistance. The second thing was to get people linked up with the resources that they needed if they were going to pursue some sort of government service type of career. And whether that meant the military or a 3-letter government agency, we were just hoping to assemble kind of a Rolodex of resources where people could get the information that they needed. And the last thing was it was near and dear to my heart. And the last tenet of the mission was leadership. And leadership, we found that tenet really important because there's the Institute for Professional Leadership at the College of Law. And the IPL was founded by one of the former deans, Dean Blaze, now the current dean, Dean Blaze. And we thought that would give us an opportunity, kind of what I talked about, the Naval Academy. I wanted the members, the executive board specifically of Rhoades Vets, to learn how to be leaders and to kind of try out their own leadership techniques and styles by taking on responsibility. And they did. They took on a tremendous amount of responsibility. And so we founded the organization. We got approval from the University of Tennessee, the big campus, not just the law school. We had to route the application through all the way to main campus. And then shortly thereafter, within about 6 months, you and I had met. And I had told you what my vision was for the organization. And you had a lot of experience with nonprofit organizations at that time. And you said, hey, look, let's just be honest. If you want to rally some support, if you want to gain money, what you need to do is you need to create a scholarship. People love supporting scholarships. So we bounced that idea around about becoming an independent nonprofit organization, and ultimately executive board decided that was the route forward for us. That was the way we could leverage the community, we could leverage the resources. We could also work with the law school to raise money for a scholarship fund to support veterans going to law school.
Right.
And not only veterans, one of the caveats that was very important for us, in fact, one of our first recipients was we wanted to also support people who had just veteran ties. So whether that was a spouse of a service member, in the case of one of our first recipients of the scholarship, but also former veterans who were then pursuing law degrees. Well, how we came about naming that scholarship is actually kind of interesting. And maybe even embarrassing of sorts. I was in the library one night pretty late, and I was kind of droning on. My energy was winding down. And I was floating through Wikipedia for whatever reason. And I came across the Wikipedia page for the Commandant of the Marine Corps, the 19th Commandant of the Marine Corps, Clifton Cates, General Clifton Cates.
Right.
And as I started to read his bio, it became apparent to me that he was a Tennessee graduate, and specifically, he graduated with a law degree. He graduated in the year 1916. Things changed in the world while he was studying for the bar exam. The United States went to war in World War I. He elected to not complete the bar exam. He had studied for it for an entire year. He had gone back to Tiptonville, Tennessee, took care of his ailing mother, came back to take the bar exam, and had, in the interim period, applied to join the Marine Corps and had been accepted and commissioned in the Marine Corps shortly thereafter in 1917. He goes off to war. He becomes one of the most decorated officers to live through World War I, has a tremendous career. In fact, until Secretary General Mattis recently, he is the only other person in the history of the Marine Corps to command at every single level between the platoon, roughly 40 Marines, to a division, 30,000 Marines, commanding a division at the famous Battle of Iwo Jima, the 4th Marine Division. That he was a Tennessee law graduate was mind-blowing to me. And I remember seeing the reference in the Wikipedia page that there was a marker paid for by the state of Tennessee outside the law school, indicating that he was the first ever 4-star general from the state of Tennessee, and he was a College of Law graduate in 1916. And at 9:30 at night, I went canvassing the campus, and I found that marker. And it was right around that time we were trying to determine who we were going to name the scholarship after. And I called an emergency executive board meeting the next day, I laid it on thick. At that time, I had completed at least a year of law school, so my advocacy skills were starting to get more refined. And we, by unanimous vote, named the scholarship the General Clifton Cates Leadership Scholarship after General Clifton Cates.
And you've been, fortunate enough to get to know his family as a part of this, which I know is really meaningful to you.
Absolutely. So he has his grandson is still living, Clifton Cates III. He lives in Pasadena, California. He a tremendously successful lawyer in his own career. In fact, he served in the Navy as a judge advocate during the Vietnam War for a brief period. Lives out in California. Every time I get out to California, we have met up. He has shown me around the house. I am now in possession of some memorabilia that was owned by Clifton Cates that are immensely important to me. His first ever flag insignia with his 4 stars as a commandant hangs framed in my room, and I hope to one day donate it to the Marine Corps Museum, which is where I believe it actually rightfully belongs.
Sure.
But right now, I'm safeguarding it, as well as the American flag that was handed to his family when he retired from the Marine Corps. So
wow, that's really special. I know that I always think of him and his family and this whole sort of journey that you went on. I live very close, and HillVets house is also very close to the Marine barracks here at 8th and I in Southeast DC. And as I very frequently walk past the commandant's house there, I always think about the inspiration that he gave you in that, Wikipedia moment that really set you and Vols for Vets on that path to creating something really special and sustainable. So you founded this great organization. You did a really great amount of service and work while you were at UT, and then you returned to the Marine Corps to a different person, no doubt, but you returned and started your career. So can you talk to us a little bit, I know no specifics, but, in broad strokes, kind of about your current work and how you feel like your legal education prepared you for what you're doing now?
Yeah, so my billet is, I'm a trial counsel, which is, I'm a prosecutor. So I prosecute misconduct that occurs on Camp Lejeune, specifically within the 2nd Marine Division and 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, which is, approximately 20 to 30,000 Marines. When they commit certain levels of misconduct, it is my team of lawyers and Marines that prosecute those cases on behalf of the government. So for those civilian lawyers that are listening, it's really in some ways, it's very similar to being a U.S. attorney of sorts. My day is consumed with Marines who commit misconduct. So, whereas I guess the biggest difference in my career before law school and after law school is I very regularly dealt with, Marines who got in trouble, the typical trouble,
Sure.
bar fights, and the like, minor speeding tickets, infractions, maybe hunting a deer in a place that they weren't supposed to, but now the majority of my interactions with young Marines is when they've committed, either felony level crimes or heinous acts. I will say that the team that I work with, the other lawyers on my team, the Marines I serve with now, are some of the most impressive individuals, and so I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, I think that Tennessee did a great service in its training and its education. Specifically, Tennessee obviously spends a good amount of time teaching people how to be advocates and how to be ready to practice law on day one. And I do feel like I was ready to stand up in court. I was ready to address, a judge. I felt very, to the extent you can be confident before your first trial or motions hearing. I did feel that my experiences, especially my 3rd year of law school, externing at the U.S. Attorney's Office, clerking for a federal judge. Those opportunities prepared me to the extent possible. So I do, again, I attribute a lot of the success I've had to the University of Tennessee.
Well, and that's tough work that you're doing, and obviously, can weigh very heavily on you. Is there, a piece of advice or, something that you turn to when you're feeling the weight of that, I guess, because that's a leadership question, but also just kind of a humanity question, for folks out there doing, that really difficult work.
Right. So I think that it was first implanted on me at the Naval Academy. I'd heard these stories of a guy named James Stockdale. And if you've never read the Medal of Honor citation of Vice Admiral Stockdale, in more common parlance, he's known for running for vice president in 1992. Towards the latter portion of his life, he was a studier and believer in the principles of Stoicism. And Stoicism is an old philosophical art of, in modern days, it is, I think, there is still a common practice to negate the power of Stoicism in that it is maybe referred to as somebody who doesn't have emotions, who doesn't show emotions, that they're heartless. But the practice of Stoicism and the art of Stoicism, it goes far deeper than that. And it's about controlling your emotions, controlling the things or affecting the things that you can affect. You cannot necessarily change the circumstances that are around you, but you can change how you perceive or how you react to those circumstances. Those principles got Admiral Stockdale through 7.5 years as a prisoner of war in the Hanoi Hilton, the most infamous prison in Vietnam. He endured countless hours of torture, abuse. His body was mangled. He suffered from impediments for the rest of his life. And he attributed a lot of his ability to overcome a lot of that to his studies of a specific Stoic philosopher, Epictetus. Mm-hmm. I don't think any of those lessons really meant anything to me at 21 or 22 years old. It wasn't until I dusted off a few of the old books that I probably had never read as a midshipman that were issued to me. And I started to kind of deep dive into my own Stoic study. That's when I, for the first time, read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I picked up Epictetus's Acridion, and here more recently, the writings of Ryan Holiday, whether it's The Obstacle is the Way, Stillness is the Key, Ego is the Enemy. Those writings have really modernized Stoicism, and I would implore anybody who's listening to this to pick up those books, explore Stoicism and how life is hard. Life sucks. There are, for every good thing that you read in the news, there's 10 bad things you can read in the news, and you can choose to be consumed by that, or you can choose to be to react a certain way and be predispose yourself to react a certain way. And so I think for me, I don't how do the kids say, I don't get in my feels very often. Like I don't let the did I do that right?
I don't know. I'm older than you.
But you're way cooler than me. That's obvious.
Not true.
So I would say that the practice of Stoicism, I start every single morning, first thing when I'm brewing my coffee, and I pick one of the primary sources of Stoicism to read and review and kind of center myself for the day, because I know there's going to be challenges, both challenges that I know that are coming and challenges that I'm not prepared for. And how I react to those challenges is not only, I think, important for me as a Marine, as an officer, but even more important as a human. And you said, like, keeping my sanity. Yeah.
Well, and that is another excellent segue to your vast reading. Mm-hmm. So if you follow Chris on Instagram, you see all of the books that he's reading, and I love to read, but I am always just sort of blown away by how much you get done in terms of reading. How do you find the time? How do you prioritize that?
Right. So the Marine in me has a daily routine, and habit forming is immensely powerful. whether that's going to the gym, doing the Peloton, reading, work. When you make it a habit and you make it a priority, it's not hard for me now. In fact, I feel far more uncomfortable when I'm traveling or I'm doing anything and I don't get to read the way I typically do than not. So for me, the first thing I do in the morning when I'm brewing my coffee before I've shaved or showered or done anything is I sit down and I open some kind of Stoic book. And then I sit down and I read. And I'm always reading 2 books at a time. And I think that that's important for me to maintain the momentum and the pace that I have. And I'm always reading either one thing that's professional or one thing that's just going to be for pleasure, whether that's a history book or I don't read much fiction, but, to the extent, I've really gotten into John Steinbeck this past year. I'm always reading something like that. So there are days that my dedication to reading is 45 minutes or so in the morning, 45 minutes or so at night, depending on my energy level. Those are like non-negotiables for me. If I'm in trial or I have a contested case, I might have to flex a little bit, but I feel uncomfortable when that's not part of my routine. But I'm not always really interested in picking up something dense like, a Dr. Steven Pinker book or a Dr. Jordan Peterson book or, something by, some deep, a David McCullough or a Ron Chernow. Sometimes I just want to read something fun. And so for me, I'm always reading 2 books at a time because I don't know what kind of energy I'm going to have that day or what I'm going to be in the mood for. So I just pick up whatever book I'm in. And sometimes that means I hammer the book that I'm reading for pleasure. And sometimes it means the pleasure book gets put on the side because I'm really enjoying the book that I believe is challenging or making me better. So it's not difficult. I set the time out in the morning and at night. I don't obviously do much reading during the day when I'm at work. And that's what it is for me.
Well, I'm sure you are doing reading. It's just not necessarily the kind of reading you would prefer to do.
Really.
So that leads to probably, I would think, for someone who reads as much as you do, the most difficult question, which is, what's your favorite book? Do you have a favorite? I will say that is a question that you've been getting, and we have seen the questions coming in. I truthfully can't tell which questions are legit and which ones are like your crew trolling you. I feel like there's some of that going on.
I have no doubt with, Marines, we're good about razzing each other. So I have no doubt that the half a dozen folks that I shared the link with might be thoroughly enjoying this opportunity.
Well, you'll have to go back later and read all of their very pressing questions about that are very well, I'm being told they're very serious questions, but you'll have to go back and check them out yourselves. But favorite book, I do want to. Yeah. I mean, and maybe we'll give you 2 if you can't really narrow it down to 1.
Yeah, I don't
favorite recent book. Let's go there.
Yeah. So, in fact, I only finished it this morning, but the best book I have read probably read this year is by Adam Grant called Think Again. It was recommended to me by a good friend of mine and a fellow Marine. I picked it up. I didn't have any expectations. I thought it would be just a good book by a reputable organizational psychologist in Adam Grant, and it was incredibly enjoyable. For those folks that are history buffs, you can't go wrong with David McCullough or Ron Chernow. If you've read Hamilton or Grant or Washington, those are some absolutely incredible works of literature. His ability to research and write and synthesize is just absolutely unmatched. And as far as fiction, I will say I had never read Steinbeck. I don't recall it ever being an assignment in high school for me. And if it was, I didn't do the assignment. But if you're into fiction and you want something that is, it is both uplifting, it's both challenging, it's both tough, it's both good. East of Eden by John Steinbeck is an incredible work. And it's not light. That is some dark reading. But I would highly recommend that in terms of fiction. So I don't know what my favorite is.
I wasn't a particular Steinbeck fan in my studies. I was a literature major. I didn't have a problem with Steinbeck, but I got into East of Eden through the movie. I was a big fan of James Dean. And so I saw the movie and I was like, wait, I need to go read the source material. You're right. It's very, very dark and it's very, very heavy, but it's incredible writing.
Right.
So good choice. Not that you needed my validation for that. That's excellent. Well, we are out of time. I mean, we could talk for a whole other hour, I feel like, and I'm just very grateful for the hour that you've given us and for all that you've shared. Any kind of closing thoughts for our audience? Wise words.
I don't know that I have any sort of wise words. I think that one of the things that either keeps me grounded or keeps me humble is have gratitude. We all, if you're here watching this, if you're here logged in, you have connection to the internet, you have some, maybe you're on your laptop or your smartphone. We have so much to be grateful for. Life is always going to be challenging. There are always going to be challenges ahead. Demonstrate gratitude, whether that, in your own life to yourself or demonstrate gratitude to somebody that's meaningful to you. And I think that, and I guess to that end, be strict with yourself and lenient with others. And I think that makes for a little bit more rewarding and happier existence.
Excellent closing advice. Well, Chris, we are so bummed that we haven't been able to celebrate you and the rest of the HillVets 100 in the style that is appropriate. Well, we hope that we're going to be able to do that sometime soon. We can't wait to really celebrate you and congratulate you for all of your hard work. For everybody else that's watching, thank you so much for tuning in. You can continue to follow all of our HillVets 100 in 100 content across all of our social media platforms at HillVets. And we love to hear from you. So if you have ideas for other things that we can share with you and content that we can provide to you, we always love to hear your feedback. And I'm not going to promise anything on behalf of Major Davis here, but you seem like you have some pretty devoted fans in the comments. So, maybe you can go answer their questions later on after you've had a little more of that bourbon.
Deal. Thanks, Betty. Thanks for your team and everything you guys do.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.